The ballroom glittered with wealth, every chandelier dripping in light like melted stars. Laughter rose and fell with the violins, but beneath the polished grace and laughter, Lady Elara Harland felt a quiet ache blooming in her chest. Tonight was her engagement ball, a celebration of a choice that had never been hers. Across the room, Lord Montrose, her betrothed, spoke with her father, his powdered wig gleaming under candlelight. His laughter was dry and careful, his hand resting on his jeweled cane, the hand that would soon claim hers before the council and seal her future. She forced a smile and turned away, her corset tightening with each breath. Outside the grand doors, the night air called to her like a secret. She stepped onto the balcony, the garden below glowing with moonlight, and for the first time that evening, she let herself exhale. That was when she heard the voice, smooth, deep, edged with quiet amusement. "Running away from your own ball, my lady?" She turned sharply. Duke Lysander of Ashvale leaned against the marble pillar, his eyes catching the light, gray, sharp, and calm as storm clouds before thunder. His presence alone seemed to quiet the wind. "Hardly," she replied, straightening. "Just taking a moment to breathe." "Then I hope you remember how," he murmured. "So many here seem to have forgotten." She studied him, the council's rebel duke, the one who had once turned down a royal marriage to speak against their laws. He was danger wrapped in grace, and every word he spoke felt like the beginning of a scandal. "I hear you speak against the council," she said, unable to resist. "I speak for truth," he replied, eyes holding hers. "And truth, my lady, tends to anger men who prefer obedience." Something in his tone pierced the quiet rebellion sleeping inside her. Her pulse quickened. She should leave, should return to her fiancé, to her duty, to the life carved out for her like a gilded cage. But she didn't move. "You should be careful, Your Grace," she whispered. "Some cages have guards. And some birds," he said softly, stepping closer, "learn to bite." The orchestra swelled again inside. Someone called her name. Lysander bowed slightly, his voice dropping low. "When you tire of obedience, Lady Elara," he said, "come find me. I'll show you what freedom sounds like." Then he disappeared into the night, leaving behind only the scent of rain and rebellion, and a girl who suddenly couldn't breathe without wondering what his world felt like. 3 days had passed since the ball, yet Elara's mind had not known peace. Every whisper of silk reminded her of him. Every candle she passed seemed to flicker with his voice. "When you tire of obedience, find me." She told herself it was foolish. He was a duke, a man of controversy, one her father warned her never to speak to again. Yet when a sealed envelope appeared on her vanity that morning, sealed with black wax and marked with the crest of Ashvale, her fingers trembled. Inside was a single line. "For those who wish to see what freedom looks like, the gallery at dusk." Her heart raced as if the paper itself breathed. She told her maid she would visit the chapel, but instead her carriage turned toward the old city district, where whispers said Lysander kept an art studio. When she entered, the world felt different, silent, candlelit, filled with paintings that looked like emotions left unsaid. One canvas caught her breath, a golden bird, painted in a cage, wings half open as if deciding whether to flee. "Do you like it?" came his voice from behind. He turned. He was dressed plainly this time. No crown of power, no cloak of arrogance, just a man with paint on his hands and truth in his eyes. "It's lonely," she said softly. "It's alive," he corrected, stepping closer. "Loneliness means it still remembers what it was before the cage." Their eyes met. The air between them tightened like a secret. "Why did you invite me here?" she asked. "Because," he said, circling her slowly, "you looked at me that night the way that bird looks at the sky, as if you'd forgotten you have wings." Elara's breath caught. No man had ever spoken to her that way. Not like a possession, not like a trophy, but like a storm he longed to understand. "You could ruin me," she whispered. "Perhaps," Lysander said, his gaze steady. "But tell me, haven't you ever wanted to be ruined by your own choice?" Her pulse trembled in her throat. She should leave, she knew. But instead she took one step closer, her gown brushing his boots. "Show me," she murmured, voice barely a breath. "Show me what freedom looks like." He smiled, not wickedly but gently, as though he'd been waiting for her to say it. And as the candles burned lower, the Duke began to paint. Not her face, not her body, but her shadow, stretching toward light it had never dared to touch. That night, when Elara returned home, her heart felt both terrified and alive. For the first time in her life, she was not obeying. She was beginning. Dawn found Elara restless, her dreams still haunted by the scent of paint and candle smoke. Each morning she promised herself she would end this, that she would forget the Duke's words, his voice, his gaze. But each evening her resolve faded, replaced by something new, curiosity wrapped in longing. When his next letter came, it was hidden in the bouquet sent by her fiancé. She almost laughed at the irony. Inside, Lysander had written, "Meet me where the truth is still allowed to breathe, the conservatory, midnight." Her heart thudded dangerously. Still she went. The conservatory was silent, its glass ceiling trembling under moonlight. Flowers slept in their beds, and the night smelled of rain. Lysander waited by the fountain, hands clasped behind his back, as though he had been there for hours. "You came," he said quietly. "Against all reason," she replied. He smiled, but his eyes were shadowed. Reason is a fragile servant of fear. He showed her a parchment, a manifesto, words written in his own hand. It spoke of a world where titles would no longer cage souls, where women would inherit land, and love would not be bound by law. "You mean to destroy the council," she whispered. "I mean to rebuild what it broke," he answered. "But I cannot do it alone. I need allies, people with voices that matter. People like you. Me." She almost laughed. "I'm a pawn, not a player." He stepped closer, his gaze piercing. "Then let me teach you how to play." His hand brushed hers, not as a lover's but as a vow. For a moment, power itself felt alive between their fingers. A branch cracked outside. They froze. Through the glass, a shadow moved, a guard. Her father's spy. Lysander's hand slipped away, and the world returned to silence. "Go," he said softly, "before they make a prisoner of your heart." As she fled into the night, her pulse echoed his words. She knew then that her heart was already captured, not by danger, but by a dream too wild to survive. It had rained earlier that evening. The palace gardens were drenched in moonlight and memory, every leaf trembling with drops that glittered like glass. Elara slipped through the gate in her cloak, her pulse wild with fear and anticipation. Lysander was waiting by the marble fountain, the same calm shadow that had haunted her thoughts for weeks. When he turned, the lantern's glow caught the softness in his eyes. Not rebellion this time, but something gentler, more dangerous. "You shouldn't have come," he said, voice low. "Then why did you ask me to?" He smiled faintly. "Because I was foolish enough to hope you would." They stood facing each other as silence filled the air between them, heavy with everything they hadn't dared to say. Somewhere inside the palace, music drifted faintly from her father's dinner hall. She thought of Montrose, her future carved in stone, and felt the cold bite of obedience again. "Tell me," Lysander whispered, stepping closer, "do you ever dream of leaving all this behind?" She hesitated. "And go where?" "Anywhere the world will let you be yours." Her breath trembled. "That world doesn't exist." "Then we'll build it," he said. He reached out, fingers brushing her cheek. She froze, the touch both terrifying and holy. No man had ever touched her without claiming her. Yet his hand felt like a question, not a command. Her eyes glistened. "You'll ruin me, Lysander." He stepped closer until she could feel the warmth of his breath. "Then let me ruin the part of you that believes love must always come second to duty." The first kiss came quietly. Not a conquest, but a surrender. Rain, silk, and breath mingled as her hands rose to his shoulders. Every rule she'd lived by dissolved beneath his touch. The world, the council, her name. None of it mattered. When they broke apart, The night was silent except for her heartbeat. "I'll keep your secret," he murmured. "But I can't promise to keep my distance." "Then neither will I," she said softly. From the shadows beyond the gate, unseen eyes watched them. The faint glint of a council seal flashed, her father's spy. But by the time the echo of footsteps faded, Ilara was already lost in the warmth of a man she'd been taught to fear, and a love she no longer wished to deny. The days that followed were stolen fragments of paradise. Letters hidden in books, secret walks through the rose corridors, whispers exchanged between glances. For the first time, Ilara felt alive, like every breath belonged to her and not the world that dictated her steps. But freedom, she was learning, always has a price. One afternoon, as she read Lysander's latest letter in her chamber, the door burst open. Her father stood there, Lord Harland, his expression carved in fury. Behind him, 2 council guards entered, their boots echoing like judgment. "Where did you get that letter?" he demanded. Ilara froze. The page in her trembling hand felt heavier than gold. "You've been seen," he hissed. "Meeting him. Embracing him. My daughter consorting with a man who plots against the very council that feeds our name." Her throat burned. "He is not what you think." "He's exactly what I think," Harland roared. "A traitor. And you," his voice cracked with disgust, "you've let him use you to reach this family's secrets." Tears blurred her sight. "You're wrong. I love him." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and the silence that followed was unbearable. Her father's face hardened. "Love," he spat. "Then love him from behind iron bars." That night, Lysander was taken from his estate. The guards dragged him through the streets in chains, accused of treason. Ilara heard the news from her maid, who found her standing by the window, white as ash. "They said he confessed," the girl whispered. But Ilara knew he wouldn't. He couldn't. She rushed to the council chamber the next day, pleading to see him, but her father barred the doors. "You've brought enough shame," he told her coldly. "He will face trial tomorrow. You will stand beside Lord Montrose, smile, and pretend your sins are not written on your skin." When night came, she snuck into the prison courtyard. Through the bars she saw him, bruised, blood on his lip, yet his eyes still soft when they found hers. "I warned you," he said quietly. "They would cage the heart before the body." "I'll save you," she whispered, gripping the bars. He smiled faintly. "You already did. You made me remember what love sounds like when it's not afraid." Then the guard's torchlight fell across the stone, and she fled before dawn, her tears lost in the rain. By morning, all of Ashvale whispered of the scandal, the Duke and the council's daughter, and the love that could bring down a kingdom. The council chamber was a cathedral of cruelty that morning. Sunlight cut through the stained glass, scattering colors across the marble floor like spilled blood. At the center, chained and bruised, stood Duke Lysander of Ashvale. The charges read aloud sounded distant to him now. Treason, sedition, rebellion. All he could see was her, standing behind the crowd, face veiled, heart blazing. Lady Ilara Harland, the woman he had loved in silence, now watching him be condemned for the truth they had dared to share. When the council demanded a confession, he lifted his head. "I will confess only this," he said clearly. "That I loved her. That her voice reminded me what it meant to be human. And if that is treason, then so be it." Gasps filled the hall. Ilara's father rose in fury, but before he could speak, Ilara stepped forward. Her voice trembled yet rang through the chamber like a bell. "Then I too am guilty," she said. "For I loved him first." The room erupted, whispers, outrage, scandal. But Ilara did not stop. She turned to the council, her voice gathering strength. "You rule with fear and call it order. You sell daughters for power and call it honor. But this man, this duke you name traitor, showed me that truth is not rebellion. It's redemption." For a moment, silence swallowed the chamber. And then from the crowd came a sound no one expected. Applause. First one, then another, until the hall thundered with it. People had heard. The council could not silence every heart at once. Lord Harland's face fell, realizing too late that his daughter had become what no man could control, a voice. By evening, word spread across the kingdom. The Duke of Ashvale's trial had sparked unrest. The council's grip began to crack. Under public pressure, Lysander was freed, stripped of his title but not his dignity. Weeks later, in the quiet ruins of Greystone Hall, where their story had begun, Ilara found him again. He was rebuilding the place by hand, brick by brick, a man who had lost everything but still smiled when he saw her. "They let you go," she whispered. "They let me live," he replied. "Freedom will take the rest." She stepped closer. "And me," he smiled. "You were never mine to take. You chose yourself and found me there." She touched his cheek, and for the first time, their kiss carried no fear, no stolen time, only peace. Above them, dawn broke through the shattered roof, painting them both in gold. And somewhere far away, the council trembled, not from rebellion, but from the quiet power of two hearts that refused to obey. The dawn that crowned their reunion did not last. Whispers spread faster than sunlight. In every tavern and courtroom, the name Lysander returned, not as hero or traitor but as legend. His rebellion had not died. It had simply changed shape. The people began to question the council's rule. And when power trembles, it always looks for someone to blame. One evening, as Ilara stood by the balcony of their restored Greystone Hall, she saw riders approaching, black banners fluttering, the council's seal bleeding red wax. "They've come for us again," she murmured. Lysander joined her, older now, steadier. "No," he said softly. "They've come for themselves. They know the people are listening." Below, torches gathered like stars on the road. Among them rode Lord Harland, her father. The man who had once condemned her was now a fugitive, cast out for shielding her rebellion. When he reached the gates, he dismounted and knelt. "Ilara," he said, voice trembling, "I have nowhere else to go." Her heart twisted. Once she'd dreamed of this, her father humbled before truth. Yet seeing him there, stripped of pride, she only felt the ache of what power had destroyed. Lysander placed a hand on her shoulder. "Mercy," he whispered, "is the final act of freedom." She nodded, turning toward the guards. "Open the gates." As the wind howled across the ruined hall, the three of them stood together, father, daughter, and the man who had turned rebellion into faith. But in the distance, far beyond the hills, smoke began to rise, the scent of another uprising. Ilara met Lysander's eyes. "It's not over, is it?" He smiled faintly. "No. The world never ends. It only begins again." The scene faded on the sound of distant drums, the rhythm of a kingdom learning how to breathe without chains. 2 years had passed since the uprising that broke the council's chains. The palace walls still bore the smoke stains of revolution, but now they gleamed again beneath banners that promised a new dawn. Yet to the people of Ashvale, dawn had never truly come. It had only changed its color. From her balcony at Greystone Hall, Lady Ilara Harland watched the city below. The markets buzzed, but not with joy. Bread was scarce, wages thin, and the poor murmured that perhaps the old days were easier. Freedom, they whispered, could not fill a stomach. Inside the council chamber, the air was thick with voices. Scholars, former soldiers, reformers, all shouting over each other. The Duke of Ashvale, Lysander, sat at the head of the long oak table, shoulders taut beneath his dark coat. The hero of rebellion now looked like a man carrying a mountain on his back. "The treasury is bleeding," said one minister. "The merchants refuse to pay the new levies." "They have no choice," Lysander replied, his tone edged. "The roads must be rebuilt," the soldiers fed. Then came Ilara's voice from the doorway. "And the people? Who feeds them?" The room fell silent. She entered slowly, the fire in her eyes softening only when it met his. For a moment, they were no longer ruler and reformer, just two souls who had shared war, loss, and love. But love had no seat in this chamber. Lysander stood. You cannot keep undermining me before the council. I cannot keep pretending the people are fine, she said. They are starving under the same roofs we promised would shelter them. You think rebellion ends with victory? His voice rose. It begins again the moment power changes hands. We are trying to keep them alive. And I, she said, am trying to keep them human. Silence. The ministers exchanged uneasy glances. The war between them was no longer one of ideals, but of methods. That night, after the council adjourned, Ilara wandered the halls where banners of the new republic hung beside faded portraits of kings. She could still smell the smoke from the night she and Lysander had torn the old regime apart. She had believed that love could heal what politics destroyed. But peace was proving to be the hardest war of all. As the clock struck midnight, a courier stumbled into the courtyard, mud on his boots, blood on his sleeve. "Your Grace," he rasped, "the banner of the old council flies again in the western provinces. A man calling himself the heir of order rallies soldiers. They march under the gold and crimson sun." Lysander's jaw tightened. "A rumor." "No," Ilara whispered. "A memory." She turned toward the window where the horizon glowed faintly red. It wasn't the sunrise. It was fire. "Who leads them?" she asked. The courier hesitated. "A name spoken in fear, my lady, Lord Cedric Vane. He claims he fights not against you, but to save you." Ilara's heart stilled. She remembered the name, a council heir she had once refused to marry, long before Lysander, a man who believed that love was just another form of control. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley. The wind carried a chill that smelled of ashes and promise. The kingdom that had fought to breathe was learning again what it meant to suffocate.